Welcome, everyone. We are with Merryman about the Akashic record and how Neptune Aries takes us through the cosmic library. This is our fourth and last online session on the celebration, the dreaming of Neptune into Aries. The next step next week is a group of us is going to meet in Sedona to actually embody this ingress on the solar eclipse. So we're all excited. And obviously, Merriman brings here an interesting perspective on Neptune that is taking it to the spiritual level. So Merriman is based in Sedona, originally from North Carolina, and has an extensive, varied, diverse background in astrology from
Beautiful.
traditional. Yes. Um, I'm in on Merriman's chart, and we can say there's quite a strong mutable flavor there. So thank you, Merriman. Thank you for your grace. Thank you for your poetry, and thank you for your insights.
Thank you, Maurice. And thank you to Rachel as well. I'm looking forward to our retreat next week. And thank you to all of y'all who've come to share this little bit of time together as we go into the Akash, as we look at astrology and Neptune and Aries. I'm actually going to have a lot of fun here. I hope y'all have fun too, because I'm going to look at some of the charts of some of the luminaries throughout time. And then we're also going to talk about together interactively about Neptune and Aries and how that will impact the Akashic records, astrology, and mystical practices on the whole. But what I'd like for us to do before we even get started is with the presentation is I would like for us to open up the Akashic records of the group. So this is really very easy. I'm going to ask everyone, if possible, not if you're driving, but everyone, if possible, to put both feet on the ground. Take a deep breath. Put your left hand, which is, it is your feminine side, it receives. Put this on the center of your chest. Put your right hand on top. This is the masculine side, the provider, the protector. We're putting our hands here and we're bringing attention to our physical body as we close our eyes and take another deep grounding breath. And as we bring our attention to our physical body, we're just scanning from the top of our head, throughout our body to the soles of our feet, seeing every cell in our being healthy, revitalized, and functioning perfectly. We're giving deep gratitude for this physical vessel that we chose to incarnate in for this lifetime. And now we're bringing our attention to our emotional body, this part of our being that feels. We recognize that we feel emotions all the time. And this week in this eclipse portal, you may be feeling a lot of emotions that are hard to explain as the energies are mounting. But just be aware that our emotions are always informing us. And think about where you feel these emotions in your body, because this is also informing you what is shifting and changing in your being. Our next breath and bit of attention brings us to our mental body. This is our mind, the part of our being that thinks, that solves, that creates, that's filled with ideas. What a magnificent part of our being is our mind. And we're giving deep gratitude for the agility of our mind. And finally, we're bringing attention to our spiritual body. This is the part of our being that is a spark of the divine, with no beginning and no end. It is truly the most permanent part of our being. And we give deep, deep gratitude, realizing that this life, any challenges we may face, is just a snap in the existence of the spiritual body. And having brought attention to the many levels of our being, we're ready to open up the Akashic records of this group gathered here today. So I'm going to begin by saying my full legal name, but I'm also going to add in the group. So I, Beverly Merryman Castles, with this group gathered today for this presentation on the Akashic Records and astrology as Neptune moves into Aries. We are centered in the presence of the divine light. And as we are centered in this space, in our mind's eye, we see our heart centers opening and the brilliant, radiant light of the love that exists within our heart radiating out. In our mind's eye, we see us creating a circle of beings, of all of us. We may not know each other in life, but we recognize each other in this moment and we join a circle of light. And now, centered in this spectacular place of remembering and light, we open the Akashic records of this time together. And in doing so, centered in the presence of our divine creator, we call in the angels, the guides, the ancestors, the highest beings of light that travel with us to bring through any messages that need to come through to be delivered with truth, with love, and with compassion. And with this, our records are open. So just take a deep breath. You can lower your hands, cross your legs, get comfortable, take a sip of water, open your eyes, and here we go. So the Akashic Records astrology and Neptune in Aries. It's the prophecy of spiritual pioneers. I believe this is the time that the work of those who came before us is finding its true voice and its true place on this planet as Neptune moves into Aries. So when we talk about, what are the ancient foundations of the records of all that is? Well, I've told a story before, but I think it's, and many of you have heard it, but it's worth repeating again. A friend of mine in Israel, who's a professor of comparative religion, asked me one time, what would Moses do if you handed him a cell phone? And I was like, what would he do? And he just said he'd throw it in the Red Sea. He'd be like, I don't need this. I know my God. I know my people. He'd raise his staff and part the Red Sea. It's this knowing that we've kind of lost this connection that is our birthright, that we've lost. And yet there's so many sacred texts that remind us throughout history of our true connection to the frequency of our being. So we can look in Hinduism, the Vedas, the Upanishads, and knowing that Akasha means ether or primordial space. And this is the substance of reality. We are the creators. And so understanding when we are accessing the Akashic records, we are in co-creation with our creator. And then the Chitragupta, the hidden scribe, records every action in the book of life. And so this is what the Akashic records are. We just find new words, but it's the book of life, it's the records, it's the library, it's the storehouse. In Buddhism and Tibetan mysticism, and I've just come back from Nepal, so I've been very mired in this, the memories of the universe. The Akash is the ethereal plane. And, the monks, the Tibetan monks and the Mahatmas, the masters, they access these records through deep meditation. When they go into these caves, when they go into these spaces of deep meditation, this is what they're doing. They're aligning with the frequency. Of course, indigenous traditions have always carried the notion of the great memory, the spiritual library, the ability to access. We've often read about or seen movies, or maybe even personally experienced times when people go off into the wilderness or into their own space to get to know their truth. And we find this even in our own meditative practices or prayer and meditation practices. And then, when we look into the Judeo-Christian mysticism, of course, the Bible, Revelation, speaks of the book of life, which records all the soul's deeds. And I always find, being raised a Christian and being one who, the Sunday school teacher even, who really loves scripture. I love scripture from all faiths, but really loves scripture. I can't see from a Christian perspective how we are, I can see, but how astrology, Akashic records, knowing our God directly has become so vilified. I love Rick Tarnas's book, Cosmos and Psyche, where he's really able to go back to ancient man again and speak to this truth of knowing our place on the earth, with the trees, with the plants, with the animals, with our God, with our creator, with the universe, with the planets. And then I love that. And then the Kabbalistic texts, of course, describe this archival divine system of divine wisdom. And so it's not a new concept. It's just something I think that throughout time and the desire to control people, we've been told, don't look at this. I can't ever believe that we have a creator, whether you call God, goddess, mother, father, whatever name you want to call, that says, know me, but don't look at my sky. Know me, but don't tap into my truth. You have to go through someone else to know this. This does not sit with me. So let's go on and meet one of the great pioneers, Madame Blavatsky, born August 12th, 1831. And she, I love this quote, when there were no churches, no creeds or sects, but when every man was a priest unto himself. That's the truth. We are the priest unto ourselves. We are the portal for the information. And she was born in an eclipse portal. So, this makes her a catalyst for spiritual transformation. She was destined, people born in eclipse times are destined to do something great. And her destiny was to reveal hidden knowledge. Can you imagine being a woman born in 1831 in Russia, just living this life, bridging the past wisdom to future vision? We have to know our history in order not to repeat it, but also to build our vision. And then it was a Leo solar eclipse. So she was a bold leader of theosophy, God, osophy, the theory of. And then also the Aquarius lunar eclipse, the revealer of cosmic truths, the greater truths. And, she's in that space between light and shadow as the keeper of the Akashic records. And I find, even as one who is a keeper myself, I do go back and forth behind the veil. So we see that, her ascendant is in Cancer, and the ruler of her ascendant is the moon. And, the moon is down here. It's conjunct Venus. It's in her fourth house. This is saying, at the core of her being was a deep inner world, a deep, deep place of emotional foundation. She really needed harmony, but her life was filled with conflict from even early childhood, and she wanted to understand relationships. And so she sought, she couldn't find the answers necessarily in the world, and yet she sought to find them, behind the veil. And so, she always had a yearning for that sort of emotional balance, for relationship in her life. She had a deep love of wisdom, the arts, and of course, a recognition of the divine feminine. So powerful that she was so cognizant of this at this time. And she also was a great student of Eastern and Western traditions, science and mysticism. This was her soul mission. And, even though she was well known all over the planet, she really felt alone. And we see this in this very sort of intense opposition to Pluto up here in her chart. And Pluto retrograde, meaning a lot of this was an internal intensity for her, even though she was out there very publicly seen. She has the North Node in Leo in the second house. This is gives her a leadership and creative self-expression. She was visible, but she's pulling in from the South Node. From the South Node, she's pulling in an Aquarius, this information that is greater than just what's known here. It's from the beyond. To actually build an empire, something of value, something that is, still here today around theosophy. And she had a destiny to embody this divine knowledge, not just talk about it, but to actually live it. And then her son is also right there with the node in the second house. She's bringing the spiritual power into the material world, and this defined her. This was her. She created a lasting institution, but it also defined who she was, even as a very, isolated and sometimes lost soul in her own being. She always had financial and material struggles. Of course, there was conflict with what she brought forward, and again, having this contrast of being very charismatic with the Leo energy, a commanding teacher, a magnetic mystic, and a guiding light, yet never quite able to get to that really balanced place. So financially, and just that place of comfort that she yearned for. And so we see her chart showing a journey from secrecy, the eighth house, to sovereignty in the second house, and creating lasting legacy. And my prayer for her really is that, as she evolved throughout her life, that she was really able to see the deep value of what she brought forward. And so we've already talked about the South Node, but the Jupiter in Aquarius in the eighth house gives her this expansive knowledge of the unseen. And it's also in Aquarius, the future, technology, radical ideas. She was ahead of her time. And her teachings, becoming more and more relevant as we evolve. And then, of course, being right there with that great awakener Uranus, she had unheard of revolutionary insights into death, the afterlife, reincarnation, the astral plane. This was an infinite world to her. It was not limited by this physical body and what's around her. So she also would get these sudden downloads from the Akashic records. And this could be unpredictable. That's very, very true. If you find yourself working with the Akash, you really do need to ground yourself in and to realize every day is not your day to be in there. And so, if you think you're always on it and always going to be on top of it, no, we go back and forth behind the veil and beyond the veil and back. And so, she had mystical awakenings through near-death experiences. She absolutely experienced trance states. And, we have to think that someone, this infinite soul that we carry in this physical body, that she was carrying forth the wisdom from beyond. And so, we have the sun is in opposition to the Jupiter Uranus, and as well as the node. And so this is the nodal axis of awakening versus remembrance. So Jupiter, it expanded her reach, and Uranus electrified her mind. Just imagine having this, Jupiter, Uranus mind always working, always like vibrating, recalibrating at all times. And then, I always get funky when I start looking at making sure I didn't mess up any of the aspects. But we have the Uranus and a trine to the moon Venus. And so this gave her even, from an emotional place and from this place of just, also I can imagine it's love, of wanting to bring this forward emotionally. When we think about light and love and that frequency, this is talking about this. I mean, this is bringing it forward. And emotional intuition wired to the higher frequencies. She, again, magnetic with an unconventional allure. And look at these eyes. I mean, my goodness, to be caught in that gaze would be to be, in a magnetic presence. And of course, the fact that she is bridging, she's bringing down to earth the mystical and grounding it in a relational way. This is so profound to be able to express this. And we have to think each person sitting in here today is open to this. And she was existing in a world that wasn't necessarily ready for this. So she was a lightning rod for the Akashic age. And this is, of course, the Akashic age has been eternal, but this is, of course, what I think should be well credited with really pioneering this. Um, she's she has anchored the esoteric into the modern era. And, we see in her astrology how she was meant to do this. And, again, when we look, we're going back to this Pluto retrograde in Aries. I didn't realize I'd done it, but I like this that I came up like a longing at the root of her being, but the power at her crown. This idea of wholly embodying the Akashic records, living in the frequency. And I'm a beekeeper, and I was filming bees yesterday out in my yard, and I was just watching them communicate, and how thinking about how the bees in the hive, they're always communicating where the best pollen is, where the finest nectar is, who's doing what job, and working in this perfect harmony without going to the queen and asking her a million questions. This is really like deep knowing at your root and power in your being. So she 10th house, this Pluto brought her, we see the Aries point up there, which Neptune will be hitting next week, but we are seeing her public legacy. This Pluto on the 10th, she didn't get to avoid it. She was destined to reshape the spiritual world. And yet the retrograde is bringing this inside, and we see this Pluto retrograde in a few charts. She was unapologetic. She was challenged. She was I got ready to say manhandled, maybe so, because we're in the records. She might be telling me something, but she was relentless. And this public destiny of, wake up is profound. And then we do see this, again, the opposition to the moon and Venus. And, her mother died when she was early. She experienced a cold marriage. She was always seeking, seeking, seeking. Can't we all relate to that desire to deeply connect with another and to be seen? I don't know that she ever experienced that as a woman, as an individual in her life, but she sure did bring a gift to the world. Um, she was called to wield power in the collective, and that did come at a great personal cost. And this is an access of becoming, from private yearning to public fire. This is actually, this is what we call, really alchemy in the crucible of our being is bringing this public fire. And so here as a child, she did not have the mother to guide her. She did not have the nurturing she needed, and yet she became such a radical voice for the feminine. And then she may not have had all the loving and care in the world, but she did bring in knowledge, gnosis, wisdom. And then she is, of course, a mystic mirror. We see her Neptune over here. We have lots of angles activated on her chart. And, with the Neptune retrograde in Capricorn in her 7th house, it's opposite her ascendant. And she's a mirror, I think, for the collective longing, fear, and fascination for what lies beyond. And yet, it's I was thinking about it. It's like she was always kind of, her personal identity was shrouded in Neptune's fog. She channeled the wisdom of the Mahatmas, the ascended masters in Tibet. She internalized, alchemized, again, in the crucible of her being. We could even say in her womb, that all-knowing womb, that we all either have a womb or we came from a womb. And this is, this is brilliant. The womb is brilliant. It knows how to bring in life, bring through life, create life. And she created life in her theosophy. So it's a disciplined, methodological approach to spiritual truth. That's where the Capricorn comes in. And theosophy is a fusion of mysticism and structured esoteric law. Her Neptune replacement revealed both her mystical gifts and the opposition she faced. It's important, I think, that we remember, though. It's beautiful to be woo-woo. It's beautiful to have lovely language. It's lovely, but we have to ground it. And she did. So she also existed service beyond self. When we see the Neptune in an inconjunct with her sun and the North Node, she was in always a conflict between, being, who she is and being canceled and, being on a mission and being in the mystery. Can you imagine having to go back and forth back and forth behind the veil, with such regularity? It's really would be a lot easier. I think it would have been easier to be an oracle in Delphi. Maybe she was. But you could just pop on your stool and, let it out. Um, she had a sense of value that required constant adjustments to integrate. Because she was self-sacrificing. She was one who was here for higher service, and she got this. She was venerated, raised up, and vilified. So, and so her identity was shaped as much by the unseen currents as by conscious will. Neptune called her to her sacred role, but it really did demand a steep toll. And I just pulled in, I was going to do some of the Uranian, but I didn't. But I did pull in the top harmonics of each person that we're going to look at. And you don't need to know how to read this chart. I'm not going to try and tell you how to read this chart. Okay, so it's telling us that she had her top vibration is 237. That's 79 times 3. 79 is a vibrational bridge between the seen and unseen realms. And also it brings a mystical blending with structured wisdom. The 3 is like trine energy. It's just giving a real flow to what she's doing. In vibrational astrology, we'll look at the circuits. And so we see a Venus, Mercury, Sun. I'll show you real quick, but I'm not going to go back and forth with each of them. As a matter of fact, I'm going to try to right now because I can't. Oh, there's Venus. Okay. So we see the Venus, Mercury, and Sun circuit being built right here. So this is harmonizing thought and beauty, synthesizes intellect, and allowing her to express with grace and clarity. We see the Venus, Mercury, Uranus circuit. So this is where it's really getting lit up. It's really inspired, coming from, just downloads. The Sun, Neptune, Mercury, the Sun, Neptune equal Mercury and Venus. This is, Sun, Neptune, Sun, your Neptune, your Mercury, your mind, what you love, how you speak. It's the mystic's vision, creative intelligence, transcendent spiritual awareness. And Uranus, Neptune, Mercury, Venus, this was her Akashic gateway. It opened the portal. And so she was a masterful channel of esoteric synthesis. And so this is, let's see. Now we're going to move on to Rudolf Steiner. I did spell his name correctly here. I'd misspelled it someplace earlier. The sum of all those counter thoughts, counter experiences, and counter actions is called the Akashic record. It is therefore possible to read every human thought on a higher mental plane, all feelings and experiences on the Buddhi plane, and all actions in the Nirvana plane. The Akashic records really are, it is tuning into the frequency. And so realizing every thought, word, action, deed, intention that we carry exists in this field, and it is an eternal field. So it's a past field, it's a future field. We're just somewhere on the thread right now. So he brought forward anthroposophy. I cannot say that word, the wisdom of humanity. The name comes from the Greek anthropos, human, and Sophia, wisdom. So this is a spiritual philosophy and science that explores the connection between the physical and spiritual worlds. And I as a beekeeper, I also am so fascinated with his work with biodynamics, but in particular biodynamic beekeeping, which is very powerful. His life was so accomplished, and it's kind of funny because he wasn't this handsome, but I kind of pulled his handsome young guy picture to put there, because he was very charismatic. Let's see, I'm going to pull up this chat just so I can see. He has a Neptune return. Oh, this is so cool. Great. Thank you. So it is, let's see, he's seeking to integrate spiritual insights with the practical life, including access to the Akashic records. Now imagine, it's interesting when we think about Benjamin Franklin bringing through the Farmer's Almanac and how, he was using astrology, but of course it wasn't called astrology, it was called the Farmer's Almanac. But, if we really were able to access, all of the Akashic records, the astrology, bringing it together, how we interact with this planet. And maybe this is a Neptune and Aries activation where we will become far more conscious of how we are growing our food, how we're tending to our animals in a more biodynamic sense. Okay, so of course he had a Scorpio ascendant, 11 degrees Scorpio. He was naturally drawn to this esoteric information. And, apart from anthroposophy, which I will learn how to say at some point in time, he also brought forward the Waldorf School of Education, esoteric sciences, and biodynamics, blending philosophy and science. Brilliant. And he was destined to teach, to transform, to challenge conventional thoughts. And also, like Madame Blavatsky, deeply charismatic, deeply magnetic. And his entire life was dedicated to uncovering hidden wisdom and bringing it into the world. And we do note, we're going to go look at this as the next slide, each of these people that have dedicated their lives have done so at tremendous personal cost. The ruler of his ascendant is Mars, and it's right here in his sixth house, and it is, conjunct Pluto. I've got something covering up the degrees, but can you imagine? I mean, that is unstoppable force. I mean, you can see how he would operate, just 24/7, just a constant, he was a machine, and probably, a great deal of stress with this as well. He did it because it's in Taurus, he built his legacy throughout with tenacity, with endurance, and, with discipline, becoming a master. And so he did sacrifice his personal well-beings for his teachings. And, he was met with a great deal, as anyone who was pioneering revolutionary ideas. He was met with resistance, yet he ultimately reshaped spiritual philosophy. And so his work was power and sacrifice. His sun in Pisces in the fourth, and that we note that is also having a sextile relationship to the Mars-Pluto. His spiritual flame was rooted from his very base, from his core, from the inner sanctum, and it flowed through an ancestry of soul memory. This Pisces, just this remembering his sun having an oppositional relationship to Saturn, which was retrograde in his 10th house. This polarity, the inner illumination versus the outer responsibility. We're seeing a theme here where folks are having to be, they're doing this tremendous internal work, this tremendous channeling work. And we think about the monks who meditate for years. They're in that one focus. This is a dual focus that comes forward. He translated his vision into form, his dream into doctrine. And, this, again, the Saturn bringing the discipline, the need to gain credibility, and to know that he left this planet with a legacy of tangible service, and he did. So important. And then the Mars-Pluto is in a trine relationship with Saturn. So I love this, like the esoteric warrior meets the master builder. And through sheer willpower, he creates these enduring structures. His spiritual authority earned through relentless and grounded mastery, grounded. We have the Saturn in Virgo, the Mars-Pluto in Taurus. And he was destined to teach, transform, and bring order to the unseen. And I like, really tapping into this, like, who was this man? And it's really realizing he he was charismatic, and he was egotistical in many ways that was recorded, but it radiated more from a sense of purpose. He was a great visionary communicator. We see this fifth house with the Mercury and the Neptune there. That was the Neptune in Pisces. Communication, Mercury, communication, Neptune, imagination, higher consciousness. And it inspired a new way of teaching children. It's in the fifth house, children. And, educating, with education, creativity and education, using the imagination, and experiential learning. I for one have a very hard time just watching a lecture, sorry, or just learning from a book. I need to do it. I need to put my hands, in the hive. I need to put my hands in the ground and really, experience it. And the notion of, and I remember this with my son when he was in second grade, and we would be studying for spelling tests, and he would be bouncing all around and swinging from the chandelier. And I had this realization that he needed to move, that he needed action, he needed to do things. And I did too. So when we would study for spelling tests, we would, roll around on the ground and, do cartwheels and, just we have to move, and understanding that we have different ways of taking in and grounding information. And he was aware of this, that you needed to not only reach the whole child, but every child, intellect, emotions, and spirit. So bringing them gnosis, storytelling, music, the arts for deeper learning. This is, we have to think. In his lifetime, the children were not going to school with story hour and gym and music class and the arts and all of that. That was integrated later. That was integrated through his work. And knowing that childhood is a sacred time. We don't always have memories of all of our adult life, but we can access tremendous memories of our childhood. And so we want to see during this sacred time, education aligning with the natural rhythms of growth. And so teaching is an art form, wisdom coming to life through play, rhythm, movement, creative exploration. And then between heaven and history, when we look at some of the aspects of his chart, the Mercury Neptune is in an inconjunct with Jupiter retrograde in Leo. So, he had a public identity as a spiritual teacher and philosopher king. And, he didn't seek fame. And he had a friction between his inspiration and, and the institutional impact. I think, people in the spiritual world who are grounding it always have this dichotomy happening. And then Venus in Aquarius is having an oppositional relationship to Jupiter. And this is at the MC. So this was giving him a bit of detachment. He was married twice, a bit of detachment. He was often probably somewhere in his mind and not really paying attention to what the people around him might need in a nurturing sense. He's bringing a greater gift through the world, for the world through, and not as much maybe focused on the individual aspects of his life, nurturing that part. So, he always had a lifelong push-pull, as I think we'll see with each of our people, between what's happening within and their responsibility outside. And his inner values, you have to think, especially in the time he was alive, out of alignment with public perception. And then he lived a life of paradox. He was a mystic with a public mission. His true soul work flowed from Pisces, his imagination, not from the performative Leo at the top of his chart. And he really he had to, I think, be somewhat, his Venus had to be somewhat, well, like an Aquarius, somewhat detached, really, for all that was coming through him and all the intensity of this chart. And then we see the sun in Pisces. I might have said this already. This is what I did. This is the the challenge of mutability, as I went back and I played with the slides this morning, which I should have never done, but I'm going to say it anyway. The burden of wisdom, Sun in Pisces, and the opposition to Saturn and Virgo, tension between this deep inner spirituality and the duty to the world. And, facing skepticism and opposition from existing institutions. People have their institutions in place, they have their funding in place and all of that. They don't want somebody bringing in something new. His life was challenging. He had intense personal structures. And, yet his mastery came through his challenges, through the hardships, through having to find that deep inner core, that deep inner truth, and bringing it forward. And he had to really fight to bring these into form. He carried a great weight of responsibility, balancing the mystical with the need for structure. And of course, the Sun in Pisces square Uranus and Gemini, a restless genius. Pisces bringing that mystic, Uranus the radical ideas, Gemini communicating knowledge. He challenged religious, scientific, and philosophical institutions, and that all of these institutions want to hold, they can be very dogmatic. Talking about reincarnation and the Akashic records and cosmic evolution. So he was definitely a visionary ahead of his time, and yet what he brought forward is still so important and relevant today. And I do feel that we're going to see a resurgence, a real deep appreciation and resurgence of Rudolf Steiner's teachings coming forward as Neptune moves into Aries. And, he disrupted conventional thought. That Uranian energy pushed him to challenge the norms and bring forth radical new spiritual ideas. And then, he broke free from tradition, that Saturn in Virgo, doggone it, retrograde, and that square with the Uranus, constant tension between structure and rebellion. And just noting that he had a lifelong struggle between this innovation and discipline, ultimately blending the two into his life's work. So I think this is so fascinating, so fascinating. I just pulled the first harmonic for each one. We could have spent days with this. I could spend days with it. But he had his top harmonic is 139. It's a prime number. So this is somebody, this goes with his Pluto or his Mars Pluto. This is absolutely just relentless, just Plutonian in his pursuit of knowledge. And, yet again, this reiterates the ability to bring this knowledge down into a structured, applicable, not only philosophy, but practice. We see Sun, Saturn, and Mars working, the disciplined visionary tirelessly working to manifest his esoteric insights into reality. Sun, Saturn, Pluto, transformation through structured spiritual wisdom, the alchemist of consciousness. Saturn, Sun, Saturn, Venus, the fusion of cosmic order with beauty, balance, right? Bringing the balance reflected in his holistic approach. We're talking about the children here, or even with biodynamics, anything. A holistic approach to arts, education, and biodynamics. And then he developed the anthroposophy, introduced the Waldorf education, biodynamics, and esoteric Christianity as practical applications of his spiritual philosophy. He is really just a disciplined architect of spiritual thought, systematically unveiling the mysteries of human consciousness. Next, we move on to Edgar Cayce, born March 18th, 1877. And he, a quote from him, "The records of the past are as the vibrations that have been left by the activity of the individuals in relationship to its surroundings. The records are written upon the skein of time and space." And we are vibrational beings. We calibrate to this. He was called the sleeping prophet and the Akashic channel. He would go into trance states to share the records. He had a Leo ascendant, and look at there, we always are seeing a lot of activation on the angles of these folks' charts. He had a Leo ascendant, magnetic, larger than life presence, and absolutely a predestined public role, pioneering trance readings. And again, we're seeing this blending the intuitive vision with practical application. And again, here, like this is an antenna, right? Right here. You know, he's just a natural ability to just bring it right down from his very being. And his entire life was shaped by the gift of accessing this knowledge while in an altered state. So, you know, we're not looking as much as at the academic here with Edgar Cayce. He was a revolutionary visionary with that Uranus conjunct the ascendant, electrifying and unconventional presence. His aura was magnetic, and he was rather unpredictable, even though he was rather quiet in his actual being. He broke the norms. He broke through the norms, introducing radical spiritual and holistic healing ideas to the public. Healing, an idea that, you know, understanding past lives, understanding parts of yourself can bring forward the notion of healing, which, you know, we've been certainly for the time that that Neptune has been in Pisces, healing is a big buzzword right now. And I think as we move from Neptune into Aries, we're going to be talking less about healing and more about being. What's happened has happened. This is all on the thread of the energetic of our being. What's in our past has happened. We don't have to keep carrying this energy forward. We get to tune in. We get to tap in right now and carry forward at this point. Doesn't mean I'm not negating very important, you know, psychological help and the work that we do to continually evolve ourselves. But I think we're really moving beyond the victim mentality into the volunteer. I'm a volunteer. I came here. And so, you know, I'm a volunteer on this planet. I'm not a victim, and I'm going to tap in and I'm going to be my highest evolved self. And so he you know, he had his Pisces sun in the 8th. So naturally, and it's right there by the Aries point, it's naturally, it's informed by unseen forces from the beyond. His sun is in an inconjunct with Uranus. And so he was constantly having to adjust, you know, that he was a private mystic. And then there he was, like his whole being thrust out into the world. And, you know, you can imagine, I think we all can imagine growing up, probably very intuitive individuals that, that especially in his time, it's just uncomfortable being this porous as he is. We see the Pluto at the top of his chart, an agent of deep, deep cultural change. And of course, it's at a 90-degree square to his Uranus ascendant. And so he channeled transformative power through who he was and revealed radical revelations. His legacy, of course, is public, profound, and enduring. His sun is in a sextile relationship to Pluto. So he had the power to transmit this hidden knowledge out into the public, out into the world, with precision. And also, we see this moon up here as well, understanding that he's bringing through emotional depth. He revolutionized the field of spiritual healing and planted seeds for the esoteric revival we live in today. So, you know, I hit on a lot of different aspects of the chart, but I'm not doing everything, believe it or not. So he, his identity was deeply tied to the unseen world. He literally left his body and to access the Akash. With the sun, sextile Pluto in the midheaven, you know, he did channel the higher wisdom into practical public service. And this sun in the inconjunct to Uranus, it did bring his soul being stirred by divine disruption. You know, he was shaped by the ethereal rather than the other way around. And then, you know, he was born, when we look at that Uranus in the square to Pluto, that is, of course, generational. So he was born in a time of collective awakening. His personal destiny echoed broader spiritual revolution. And his presence was a gateway between the material world and higher consciousness. When we look at the divine mirror, we look at his seventh house. We're seeing Mercury in Pisces. This is his clairaudient channeling. You know, he literally heard messages coming through. Venus in Pisces, you know, he had a deeply compassionate soul, and his entire practice was relational, working with others, helping one-on-one, working with others. He had the Saturn in Pisces. Again, we have the sacrificial nature that's coming. His Saturn is my Saturn. I have a 12-degree Pisces Saturn. I just recognize that. But anyway, he had a sacrificial nature to his being. And then he knew it was a sacred responsibility, what he was bringing through. And of course, having his North Node, his destiny, it was his karmic path of merging the divine through others and delivering this through others. His greatest lessons and gifts came through his service to others. And, you know, he was, of course, a medium, but he channeled divine insights. His relationships were not only with the individuals that he might be serving, but with the divine that he was channeling through. And, you know, his marriage and his community work were structured containers for his spiritual labor. And, you know, having Saturn right there in that mix does help to ground a bit. I mean, I know it's in Pisces. And, you know, I like that Mercury translated the whispers and Venus opened the heart. His destiny wasn't personal, it was relational. His sacred role as an intermediary came alive through his devotion to healing others. His ninth house moon in Taurus, you know, up here again at the top of his chart, noting it's right here between this Pluto, this Neptune, the Chiron. It's rooted emotional wisdom, calm. It's in Taurus, so it's rooted. There's a calmness about his being. You can see this in his face. And while being receptive to the higher truths, attuned to the rhythms of the soul cycle, of nature, of universal law. And a vessel for this karmic recall, realizing we're accessing the information on a continuum. And we have this stellium his moon is in a sextile relationship to the stellium. And so again, I don't need to go through all that. He was literally just, you know, this brought this through in a very intense emotional way through actually leaving his body, the Neptunian dream state, to the Chiron, which is healing, you know, healing others. It's like right here, you go, oh my gosh, how can a chart be so so real, so accurate? He was just a steady flow of intuitive understanding, deep spiritual devotion, and understanding relationships as sacred. And he, you know, I wrote here, the soul remembers through Edgar Cayce, it spoke. That's amazing. And, you know, I think as this Neptune moves into Aries, we're going to be accessing this more, our soul's message for us more. We're not going to be doubting it. We're not going to think we have to go through someone else. We're going to realize we can get there ourselves. He was a tireless spiritual warrior. His spiritual work was not just duty, it was inspired, it was a creative act. And, you know, because of the fifth house, we're looking here at the Mars and his vertex there. His readings were not mechanical. They were inspired creatively through his soul's purpose. And, you know, the Mars giving him a relentless commitment to his work. He conducted thousands of readings, often sacrificing his own well-being. Again, seeing this state of sacrifice. And, you know, he did also, we see Capricorn's influence where he built lasting structures for his teachers, ensuring the world would continue, they would continue in the world long after him. He was a creator in his own right. And the vertex brought him many fated encounters and and gave him a pivotal life direction. And, you know, his entire life was created in his relationships with others. And so, you know, his work with seekers and the divine timing, let's see, his path was dictated by his interactions with others, his work with seekers, and the divine timing of his abilities as they unfolded. And then having the Mars and the vertex in a sextile with the seventh house stellium. This was the engine. This was the engine. It fueled a life of, of tireless service. He was disciplined, so deeply disciplined in his gifts. The vertex activated the fated relationships, and the trine to the moon on the midheaven, again with the influence of these big dogs around him, created a grounded channel through which he inspired creativity, and his inspired creativity and emotional wisdom flowed in a very predestined public way. And so this is, of course, amplified by the moon's proximity to Pluto, Neptune, and Chiron, a great healer. And so just going a little deeper into the moon, just because of its bringing this deeply emotional and intuitive part to him, but also the nurturing part, especially in Taurus, nurturing, and his inner wisdom becoming public legacy. And, he was a spiritual caretaker. Also noting this moon right up here, Gladys Davis Turner was a very long-term companion, was stenographer and spiritual companion to him. And she stood right beside him, with great devotion. And this placement acknowledges his global reach. The moon, it crowned Casey as a vessel of compassion, while Mars in the vertex in Capricorn carved a sacred path that allowed his soul's work to endure. So I found it interesting to note his highest harmonic was 189. And so this is a numerical gateway to layered consciousness. It's pretty involved right here. 7 is being, going this deep internal stillness. It's number 7. And 27 is, it is bridging the physical and the mental and the spiritual realms. It's also telling stories with others, deep trance states, allowing for seamless navigation between the dimensions. So we have Sun, Jupiter, Uranus. And this is, this is the sun with the expanded energy and the brilliance of Uranus, prophetic vision, quantum leaps of understanding, lightning infused downloads of structured wisdom. And then the Uranus-Venus moon, a fusion of beauty, intuition, and visionary inspiration. So he was able to channel with wisdom and emotional depth, but also thinking of Venus as bringing harmony, harmony and balance. And then the Mercury, Saturn, and Mars, the refined mechanism for translating the divine wisdom into structured knowledge. It's amazing how these harmonics can tell the story of the chart. Almost we could have just left the charts out. He was the embodiment of the living oracle. And so, of course, his legacy is written in the library of the eternal, and of course, continues to inspire spiritual seekers and healers worldwide. So next, we're going to move on to Dolores Cannon. So born April 15th, 1931. The subconscious mind is the gateway to infinite knowledge. It holds the records of all lives, all experiences, and all wisdom that has ever existed. She had a Virgo ascendant. What do we see right here? Neptune. What do we see up here? Chiron. I mean, it's just kind of crazy. But we have her Neptune right here. She was she was a very precise woman, very methodical. She didn't view esoteric knowledge as something out there and esoteric. She viewed this as yet just another component of what it is to be human and in existence on this planet. She pioneered quantum healing hypnosis techniques. And so this is bridging our past lives and higher consciousness. And I don't know if any of y'all have ever listened or read any of her work, but it's fascinating. She again, we're seeing this more so with the first two than Casey, but structured inquiry with expansive spiritual insight. So she's building on what's come before. And of course, her chart reveals just a destiny to explore the hidden realms, to go into the ethereal, the nuanced. And so she was creating a bridge between the subconscious mind and universal knowledge so that we're able to access that. So she was born in the shadow of an eclipse on she was born April 15th. The eclipse was April 17th. She again is marked as a soul who was meant to bring forward what was hidden in the darkness. And, of course, we know that the eclipses bring great destiny often. And noting that her life, with this over here in the eighth house, was very much so driven by unseen forces. And so she walked through life with the veil very thin, and it probably took a lot to cultivate with this Neptune on the ascendant, even in Virgo, to cultivate a type of barrier for her, something, a barrier for her, because looking at this chart, you could almost see how somebody could lose their mind with this chart. So she was seen as the messenger of the eclipse. She came to illuminate what had been obscured, creating a direct path for others to access their own hidden knowledge. She had, again, that Virgo ascendant and that Neptune rising, blurring the boundaries. She in herself had a sort of dreamy presence. Look at her right there and there. I've found that picture of her with the universe behind her and that very pensive but kind look. Her chart ruler, Mercury, is conjunct Chiron. And well, let's see. I didn't circle that there, but just go with it. In the ninth house. And so she is, and her chart ruler, Mercury, is conjunct Chiron in the ninth house, right up there at the top of her chart. So, she was naturally coming in here to be a healer, a very earthy and grounded healer. It rules her ascendant. And so this is her also bringing through her wisdom, ninth house, and beliefs in higher learning. Her words became like medicine. And she was teaching, traveling, and transmitting messages from the Akashic field. The Taurus did ground her visionary insights into practical, structured readings. And the axis of the Virgo Pisces and Taurus Scorpio marks her as a translator of the mystical into the material, a guide between worlds. And she was a storyteller. She was a storyteller, Mercury and Taurus, grounded and methodical in her thinking. Chiron with the Mercury, she was that wounded teacher. Her early struggles with communication and belief systems led her to a mission to heal and share her wisdom. We do bring what we suffer through forward and share this with others to help them on their path if we are truly evolving as a human being. We see this Jupiter and having a conjunction to Pluto right here in the 11th house in Cancer, this nurturing, loving Cancer. Powerful, healing, transformative influence on collective consciousness. We see Jupiter and Pluto in a sextile relationship to this Mercury Chiron, expanding her ability to teach, research, and communicate spiritual truths in a way that resonated, healed, and landed with a wider audience. And the Mercury Chiron, in a sextile relationship with the Jupiter Pluto, her deeper wounds fueled her mission to transform consciousness. So, being able to pull from her life experience and teach through that is powerful. And, there's an important thing. I think it's very important. I can't remember where I read this, and I'm going to mess it up. But, it's so critical for us to be well read, to be well informed, to be knowledgeable, so that our wisdom has something to ground to, something to root to, so that we're able to share it. Because this knowledge that's just all out here, it's not grounded yet. It's not, we need to ground it. And I think she was profound in this, a visionary communicator, bridging deep personal healing with expansive cosmic wisdom to shift the collective understanding, to open the pathway for us to better understand the Akashic records. And she broke through that which is taboo. Her North Node in Aries in the 8th house, destiny to pioneer the unknown. South Node in Libra in the second house, a past rooted, and just wanting to, it's in Libra. She wants to be comfortable. She wants to, everything beautiful, but she moved beyond that with Jupiter and Pluto squaring the nodes and Uranus. And so having these planets on the ascending bendings, an evolutionary force propelling her towards her North Node purpose. And, noting that Jupiter in Cancer again, just a great teacher, expanding the the metaphysical wisdom to the collective. And then that Pluto in Cancer in the 11th house, transformational force, moving her to challenge outdated paradigms, intensely challenge. I mean, this is a profoundly intense energy and a motherly energy that's coming forward. Her messages clashed with what was normal, what was accepted, and she was challenged, but she ignited change. And so again, this story of what makes me comfortable versus what helps to propel the planet forward. And so she was also known to do powerful teachings in groups. And so she wasn't just remembering the past, she was rewriting the future. And this Jupiter and Pluto would ensure that she wouldn't just stop at discovery, she was going to bring the world with her. When we look at her harmonics, 23 times 5 times 2 is 230. This is a vibrational key unlocking the pathways between parallel realities and higher dimensions. She's a bridge. She bridges past, present, and future timelines. So integrating what is quantum consciousness into our human awareness. And here's where it's going to get really good for us as Neptune moves into Aries, because this is going to become more of how we exist. So it's not just going to be saying my guide said. I mean, it's going to be like really, I am stepping into the I am of Aries. I am presence. The Sun, Uranus, and Neptune circuit, seamless flow of information from higher dimensions into human awareness, dissolving the linear constructs of time. Dissolving the linear constructs of time. Wow. Right? Time is an illusion anyway. Mercury, Saturn, Pluto. This encodes her with a deep cosmic intelligence into what is actually structured, accessible knowledge, and refining what might be raw downloads into that which is more accessible, applicable, and understanding, why is my soul here? I mean, why are we accessing any of this anyway? Why do we even care about all this? Because we want to know, why am I here? What's my purpose? Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, a timeless messenger, balances, I'm talking about time and then timeless, balances action, wisdom, and structure, providing the discipline to explore vast spiritual truths while grounding them into practical, repeatable systems of understanding and teachings. So her legacy in the Akashic field, she was a modern day oracle. I could see her in Delphi for sure. Maybe I was there with her. Translating the subconscious into the conscious understanding. She's a bridge between the past and the future, using regression to retrieve ancient wisdom while guiding humanity into new spiritual frontiers. Her methods did change the landscape of Akashic exploration. She didn't change, she evolved it. I think I didn't use the right word there, but she evolved it. And, she has, I think, in the Neptune and Pisces era, really reemerged as a voice. I think many people are more aware of her and seeking her teachings. So she was born to transform spiritual reality, a true pioneer in unlocking the Akashic records for the modern world. And now, how are we on time, Maurice? We good? Yeah. All right, I'll keep going. So for fun, I brought up.
We have about 40 minutes left.
Perfect.
Whatever works
I've
for you.
got it. We're good. So just for fun, I brought up, and y'all can put in the chat, my own chart. I'm an astrologer. I'm working with the Akashic Records. I even made my own quote. So the universe speaks through us, through our subconscious, our dreams, and the rhythms of time. The Akashic field is not a fixed archive, but a living current of wisdom humming like the bees, tuned to the vibration, frequency, and the sacred geometry of existence. The records are always speaking, always unfolding. We are the co-creators of what comes next. I left my quotation mark off. I'm a Virgo. So any ideas? Anybody see anything in that chart that that might speak to why I'm called to astrology and the Akashic records? You can just pop it in the chat. Nobody sees anything? Neptune in the 12th house. Yep. Neptune, Mars in the 12th house. Yeah, that's, it's very interesting. I'm very open. I'm in recovery. And I realized nearly 13 years ago when I stepped into recovery that I was so porous, that I was taking in so much information. I was so sensitive that, the false spirit kind of shielded me from the true spirit. And in recovery, I definitely discovered that, I discovered the true spirit. Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Linda. Ninth house bringing discernment to the spiritual, metaphysical realm and language to that discernment. Thank you. I'll take it. Yes, Pluto yeah, Pluto sign. This whole activity up here, this is intense. I'm going to tell you, I don't know that you necessarily want to come in with that. Thank you, Rachel. Mars being a planet of courage and exploration and motivation. Yeah. It does add a deep sense. Pluto does add a deep sense of purpose. This is a very friendly little sextile relationship happening here. So it is definitely a channel. And and learning how to cultivate this channel, how to refine and hone this channel has been has been and continues to be my life's work. And understanding, I think, because this energy, there's a lot of output with this energy, and we have, the South Node right here on the ascendant, and it I have to manage my energy very carefully. There's a lot of, there's no fire in planets in the chart, but there's fire in my ascendant, and I have to be very careful how I manage my energy. And so I am learning now that I can step forward and step back. Sometimes I'm on, sometimes I'm off, you know. And lots of private moments of mystical nature. I have everybody should get to live my life, really, because I have some of the most magical, incredible, mystical experiences that yeah, and some of the most incredible mystical experiences. And I'm so grateful that often there are witnesses there to see it so that I can be like, it really happened, right? And so I do have that wonderful gift that comes with this. Yeah, my South Node being my origin, fire sign and house. Yeah, so that was fun. I didn't mean to make it all about me. Ah, wow, I love this. I love this. Thank you, Christina. Mercury, Pluto as a psychopump below the realms, and Uranus as the outer realm and the outer realms. Huge radio station. Yeah, Rick Levine says to live my chart is like living AM and FM at the same time. So, um, so let's see. My Chiron it is at 20 degrees, and it is down on my IC. This is my roots. Yes, I've come in to be a healer. Of course, this Chiron in Pisces. I was a very porous child. Very porous human being, very sensitive child, and every family does the best they can, and we all get to come in with our own story. But my story has really wanted me I want to help other people. I deeply, deeply want to help. Yeah. Um, and so, and you asked, are the spiritual gifts accepted by my family? Interesting. I always laugh about this. 12 years ago, and longer than that now, I was president of the debutante club. I just had a whole different life. I was, a doctor's wife. I was all of these things, and I was doing charitable events and had a little company that actually grew. But I did a complete change. I realized the person that I came in was not that I was kind of bred to be, was not the actual person that I am. So with that, I had truly a spiritual awakening in 2012, and it just shifted the whole course of my life. And so my family, I love that, Rachel. We're gonna have a lot to talk about, but you know, my family actually embraces me, and it's pretty fascinating because, like, my brother called me earlier in the week, and he was like, "What is happening?" And my family accepts it and embraces it and encourages me. And you know, the interesting thing is I have a lot of very interesting, very buttoned up people reaching out to me, whether they're clergy, business people. They've seen me make this shift, and they know me as a very grounded, focused, not only business person, but respected member of the community. And yet I've made this change, this evolution, and they want to know. They want to know what's going on. So I sense, even as we're going into the astrology, and they're kind of impressed, that I can look at them and I can say, well, here you are. Here's your daddy. Here's your mama. Here's your partner. Here's your career. Let's look at your money. You know, even though we can do that, we can look at the business and so on and so forth. And I think one of the most important things I want to be able to bring through is to empower each person to access their own records with confidence, with belief in themselves. So enough about me. Not enough about me. So it is interesting. I have a hidden guide on my path. My grandfather was a 33rd degree Mason and Shriner, so he carried the knowledge of this esoteric lineage. I'm Scotch Irish by birth, or by lineage, and he used to tell me bedtime stories about King Arthur and the Lady of the Lake and sacred quests, and he was priming me for this path that I would later walk. He laid stones for me, metaphorically and literally. He provided for me opportunities and protection, even material stability, that has allowed me to pursue my work openly. Whereas if I were dependent upon maybe just myself alone, or my former husband, or, you know, whatever, that I might not be able to pursue things this path so openly and freely. And I didn't realize then, but I think I want to challenge everyone to look back in the relationships. Where has someone in your past initiated you into something larger without you even knowing it? That his symbols and stories and the subtle nudges were part of an ancient tradition that connects directly into the Akashic field and the planetary cycles we trace today. And so as planetary transits awaken us at key moments, so too hidden wisdom. We may be receiving it from a parent, from a friend, from a teacher, from a stranger in the grocery store, and it pops open when it's supposed to for us. So, you know, quickly, my top harmonic is 178, the Oracle of the Melissai. The Melissai are the priestesses of the bee, and I definitely consider myself a priestess of the bee. And so with this brings, yeah, I'm smart, intellect and artistry. I like that the actual official written is intellect, artistry, deep wisdom, and practical innovation. That was just cut and pasted. But creating new paradigms, blending astrology, Akash, and conscious evolution. So, you know, my Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, this may not show up as much in my natal chart, but in my harmonic, it's showing up, you know, articulates truths with clarity and inspiration. Mercury, Venus, and Saturn, I am able to bring structure. Might take me a little while with that Saturn and Pisces, but structure and refine esoteric wisdom, giving it clarity and endurance. And then, you know, I am very disciplined. And so even though I'm a Virgo, I'm self-critical and I fall short, I do keep plugging. And the Sun, Mars, and Uranus, I hope to be a catalytic force for spiritual revolution. I hope to break old paradigms and pioneer new methodologies for spiritual evolution. And I love bringing the intellect along with intuition. You know, knowledge plus experience is wisdom, and bringing mystical knowledge through in real life and help hopefully activate and awaken others. So, Here we're going to just have a moment where we can, it's 11:22, so we can have some time where we can talk about it. Our records are open. So Linda said, same here. My belief right now as a rainbow girl given through a male lineage, set me on a path of deep spirituality, completely void of dominational attachment. In my brief life as a rainbow girl given through a male lineage. Can you tell us more about that, Linda? Oops. Let's see. Let's see if you can pop back in. So I want to just ask just a few questions. I mean, we don't have to go into this whole long thing, but what do you think? Put in the chat. What do you think Neptune and Aries means for our spiritual access? It's been in Pisces. It's been dissolving boundaries, bringing mysticism more forward. More and more people are interested in astrology and other esoteric arts, and it's entering Aries. It's it's the initiation, it's the 0 point. And so we are, what do you think that's going to mean? So Linda had a Masonic male lineage, made you a rainbow girl in the Masonic order, early initiation into spirituality beyond the church. Love that. Thank you. So also the Neptune and Aries, how might this impact divination, trance states, so the way we engage with cosmic memory? Well, I think that it's going to really bring forward a sense of we're going to be building greater community around our spiritual, I mean, even greater than we have right now. We're going to see our churches look very different, the way we gather. I think as one who also loves scriptures and says where two or more are gathered, there I am. We will be gathering together very intentionally, maybe channeling together, dreaming together, as we will be doing at our retreat. We are not going to, I was at the movie. I'm a part of an organization called Reconsider, reconsider.org. Look it up. And it's very committed to the ancient ways, to honoring the ancient indigenous ways, and not in an appropriation sense, but in the fact that we are all indigenous people. And at some point, and going back to this truth. And it's a beautiful movie. It's produced by Steve Apkin and Marcina Hale. And it's specifically about Israel and Palestine, but just conversations between, they're called peaceful combatants now, because they've gone from being, in the military to being about how do we find ways to unite. And I think we're going to really be looking at different ways. Okay, so embracing our magician self. Thank you, Victoria. Yes. And comfortable accepting direct connections to all that is, not needing an intermediary. Correct. Correct. I think we need each other. Ram Dass says we're all just walking each other. He said we're all just walking each other home. But the truth is, we do need each other to reflect. We are one spirit, no doubt. Each of us, inserted in these bodies that we chose, and having this human experience. But when we look into one another's eyes, we're looking into the eyes of God, and we're looking into the eyes of self. And so we do realize that all of ourselves have different experiences, and together we make a greater collective whole. Beautiful. So somehow I didn't put that one on replay. How will the Akashic records become more integrated? As Uranus moves into Gemini and Pluto deepens in Aquarius, information sharing is accelerating. Could this signal a future where the Akashic field becomes more accessible through technology? What about AI, right? Who knows? Or collective consciousness? How might astrology evolve alongside it? Now, I think what's interesting about AI is, yes, AI is AI, but it is informed through us ultimately. So and I think it can evolve from there. But does anybody have any ideas about how astrology might evolve beside the Akashic records, or how will they become more integrated? Well, I think part of what may happen, what we may see with the astrology is, with the Akashic records is, as I often do, I will open someone's Akashic records before we look at their chart. Why? Because I'm human, and I can go around the chart, I can kind of follow a rubric, I'm very intuitive, I can do all of these things, but really, when we're heading into a chart and we're saying, what do they really need to hear today? Because all of us who are working with astrology do know that the chart will pop open with different information at different times. And, something will come through that's important at that point in time. And so I like this question. Are we moving from mysticism to embodiment? So Linda had said, will our spiritual understanding become more real and tangible, more concrete, not woo-woo, but real? 100%. And this is what Dolores Cannon was really trying to bring through. She was really trying to bridge this, that it's not just, spiritual beings having a human experience. We are spiritual beings. And, this access is our birthright. And so, yes, and I think we will be, it's the person who, it's kind of funny. We do live in a funny world, right? Like the person who doesn't believe that you have eternal access is kind of strange to me. Like, that's like, what you mean you can't just access? I mean, it's not like I have all the answers. Trust me, I don't. But I am far more settled and embodied, realizing that I have this profound connection to the divine and that I can trust it. At least maybe not for everything in the world long out, but I can trust it for the next stone on the path. Yeah. And so I'm sorry this is doing this. So the transition from Pisces into Aries suggests a shift from ethereal wisdom to direct experience. So, I just was in Nepal a couple weeks ago and got home, and I had some of the most mystical experiences there. And they're very difficult to put into words, but it's experiences of recognition, of remembering, and realizing this is real. It is absolutely, magic is real. And we have the ability to tap in and recognize every person we meet. And that also can be our intuition. This is a bad person. This is a good person. You kind of know it. When you walk in a room, when you meet someone, when you met your best friend, you probably just immediately, fit together. And then other people, you just naturally, maybe not so much. So will our spiritual understanding become more real and tangible? Oops, no. So, Sid was born in Nepal. Well, Sid, I love Nepal. I did not know that I would have such a love affair with this very, very special place in the world, but it's spectacular. Thank you for sharing that. And then, as we're continuing, oh gosh, now I'm making myself crazy. Will astrology and Akashic work move away from abstract symbolism towards a more embodied living practice? How can we make more mystical insights actionable in daily life? How can we make more mystical insights actionable in daily life? That's a really important question. And I'd love it if people would put something in the chat about that. How can we make mystical insights actionable in everyday life? Because, this is living in the flow. And this is part of what I love about the bees. It was funny, after I had my moment of awakening and moved into recovery and did all of these things, moved from, I was also working at the Chamber of Commerce doing their major events and president of the Debutante Club and blah, 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 blah. And then I ended up going to Mexico and working in an orphanage, La Ciudad de los Niños and Niñas, and bringing arts programs to them. And while I was there, I was handed the vision for the hive design and porcelain. And I was given the tagline, honor the flow. This meant a lot to me as a beekeeper because I know the honey flow is the most abundant time in the hive. I also, because I was starting a new business, appreciate the cash flow. And, also being in the divine flow, like realizing that I was given while I was working in this orphanage in La Paz, beautiful place, this wonderful vision for the future. And I was in that divine flow and I listened. And then the same thing happened when it was time to move to Sedona. Even when I bought this house, I mean, it was kind of crazy. Maurice and I were out with some folks and I was talking about building a house and he was like, oh my God, why are you doing that? That's it. Buy a house. I was like, there's nothing on the market. And then the next day, this place pops up and, 48 hours later, I had a contract on my home. So Victoria said, it feels like mysticism is becoming as a part of what it means to embody. Yes, I think you're right, Victoria. I think you're exactly right. Victoria is also, she's very mystical herself, very intuitive and very tuned in and wise. And she'll be a part of the retreat next week. But I think you're exactly this. You're exactly right. This wisdom is within you and we walk with it on a daily basis. And so we are continuing. Yes, thank you. I thought I'd outfoxed it. Does Pluto in Aquarius signal a new esoteric renaissance? I'd really like to see if anybody has any thoughts on that. Pluto's transit through Aquarius alongside Neptune's ingress into Aries may radically transform how we access knowledge, especially hidden or forbidden knowledge. Could we see the return of mystery schools, decentralized Akashic libraries, or a new astrology rooted in quantum science and vibration? I think these are things to think about. These are really interesting things to think about. Mystery schools, we see them emerging. Often people involved in a year-long study or a couple of year-long study, or we also see people who are, leading lots of retreats. And even what we're doing next weekend is a little mini mystery school that we're entering into. It involves astrology, it involves the Akash, it involves dreaming, it involves this deep connection and activation with one another, with this planet and with the stars. So poetry and literature changes, sure. And maybe we'll drop the thriller genre, new visionary mystical expressions. Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of literature that's focused around the mystery. We're just going to see, that we are already seeing astrology, with such a resurgence. And Michael Bryan, with whom I've studied, it says 2025 is the year of the astrologer. AI may be seen as the decentralized library of the Akashic. Victoria, say more about that, please. I know it's going to take you a moment to type. Thank you, Tracy. Can't wait to see you next week. So while Victoria's typing that, what role do we play in writing the future? I think this is really important because to me, it is so amazing that we are here on this planet at this time, finding one another, bumping into one another on the internet, in real life. And we are at a critical time on this planet. And so I think us waking up, there is another way. This wonderful movie that I encourage everyone to find a screening of. If you can't get access to it in your hometown, you can contact me and I can get you a link from Marcina and Steve. to view it. They also produced Fantastic Fungi. They produced Disturbing the Peace. So these are real leaders. James Cameron was an executive producer on the film. So it's really powerful. We are finding there is another way to exist. The ways that we have solved problems, the ways that we have communicated, the ways we've separated ourselves from each other. Is no longer what I love being in AA as Alcoholics Anonymous is I always thought that was about not telling anybody like somebody else had a problem or whatever, which is true, you don't. But it is that when you walk through the doors of that room and you're sharing with other people, you are one spirit, you're anonymous. Your story is their story. It might look different, but the truth is it's the same story. Our lives have become unmanageable and we're seeking community, a higher consciousness to bring us back to sanity or to restore our sanity, or maybe we never had it, to give us some sanity. So let's see. Christina said, helpful souls walk among us, unrecognized helpers, perhaps more in this time of deep spiritual evolution. She read a lovely essay by Jean Houston yesterday called Mr. Taylor, which was what she thought was the name of the wonderful gentleman she joined on walks and talks for a year when she was 14. She found out many years later it was Teilhard de Chardin. Wow. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And Victoria saying, in relationship with AI, I gain access to build and co-create what wants to be formed. Yes. And that's interesting because we can go to AI and take partially formed concepts and pretty rapidly get back a pretty solid container for that or outline for that. So yes, I think you're right. I think AI is an interesting way of helping to accelerate our process and congeal it as well. And then if the Akashic records are a living field, constantly updated, and astrology an evolving system, what role do we have in shaping these disciplines? Are we passive seekers, active participants in dreaming, or active participants in dreaming a new world into being? And I think it is we are here to constantly evolve. Yes, there is enough for everyone, Linda. Yes. We are here to constantly evolve, and evolution is integration. And so, and I think that's a really important part. Evolution is integration. So we are not separating ourselves from that which is around us. We are integrating that which is and becoming more whole, more of the I am that is Neptune, and I mean that is Aries. And so it's pretty fascinating. So if anybody has any ideas, anything you want to put into the chat before we go to the final slide. Spirit needs to be integrated into the emotional body. Otherwise, we are bypassing. Maurice, that is such a deeply profound statement right there. I mean, and I think I would love it if, even as a group next week, those of us who can be together, if we can unpack that even more, because that is huge, huge. And that is a big question that we really have to get into. What is bypassing versus what is evolving? And I think, it is this integrated process that is that's wherein the answer lies, but it's not an easy answer because, it is easy to sit there and go, I'm love and light, and I'm going to, just spread happiness and daisies, or for me, like honey and bee wings around the world. But it is this space of like living this very privileged life where I'm in Sedona, and my beautiful views and beautiful days and beautiful friends, and everybody kind of speaks the same language. It's very easy to be me here. It's not so easy to be me if I'm living in a war-torn country, if I'm experiencing a sick child, or going through something with a relationship. It's life can be very challenging, and life is real. And so it is a very nuanced and layered a very nuanced and layered question. And Rachel had written integration, oneness. And, this is again, going back to the dream work, going back to this truth of knowing that when we look in the eyes of another, we're looking in the eyes of God, and going into our dream space with this knowing, with this gnosis, and recognizing that we are seeking our higher selves in the ethereal world, in the dream space, and bringing this back as a collective story. And for those who are in the group chat, we did weave or wash one dream, and we'll be doing more this week. I'll send a prompt tonight, but it's fascinating to see how we are constructing something together. We are constructing the world together. Everything, or it's nothing in this world has ever happened without a dream. And that is so powerful. Somebody had to vision it. Somebody had to dream it for it to actually happen. And that's the precipice which we stand on as Neptune moves into Aries. And Victoria says, I am on for opening up into emotional body integration. And Rachel, boundaries from sacred range that grieves for injustice. Boundaries from sacred rage that grieves for injustice. Rachel, there's a reason that you have stepped up into this world in service as you have in Ojai, and I'm sure throughout your entire life, especially when you're in the junior league. But I'm teasing about that. But I was in the league too. It's very important work's done. But but stepping up and this sacred rage, it is not, and it was interesting, these peaceful combatants were speaking last night about the rage that the soldier carries when they witness their community, members of their family senselessly killed. It's particular October 7th in Israel, but speaking around that theme in particular, but this rage and this want for retribution. But then it is like the sacred rage as the divine fuel. Thank you, Jean. Beautiful. Nonviolent activism and change, Neptune and Aries. And Maurice, I love that too. Nonviolent activism, and change. Because we think of Aries as activism, I'm in it. But Neptune bringing this, yes, it's activism, but it's softer. Um, it's actually more compelling because it's more real. Sacred masculine activism. And aren't we seeing this happen right now? Folks have heard me say this, some of the folks that have been thank you, Gandhi had Neptune and Aries. I have had, well, in a period between like December 23rd until mid-January, no less than 6 men either walk through my office door or, into my life and just say, I'm not happy. I just want to be happy. I just want, I want to feel right. And, the men are awake. They want to be awake. They want to be in that masculine role. And this is a call to the feminine for us to be in our own sacred feminine. We have a role in this relationship as well. And so this is not an us against them thing. It's a we thing. How are we creating this dynamic together? How are we holding our feminine as women? And as men, how are you serving as an example of the evolving sacred masculine? Gandhi feels like an emotional body integration lived. Ah, what beautiful words, Victoria. So before I know we've got about 14 minutes left, but if anybody has any questions or anything, I'd love to answer them. And then we will close out this beautiful time together with deep gratitude for your letting me share and keep hitting this page again and again. So with no further questions, I'm going to go to our last slide and just say, in a world that feels hijacked, You are not powerless. The time of passive prophecy is over. The veil has lifted. The universe is within you. Neptune ingresses into Aries. And so I welcome you to the ancient future, the new age of the oracle. And if you wish to know their name, look in the mirror. Thank you.
Thank you. Gemini moon to Gemini moon.
I'm trying to get out of here. Yeah. Thank you.
A wealth of information and a greater understanding of, I think, as astrologers, as we read the signs, understand that we're tapping into other dimensions as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's multi-dimensional.
Correct. Yeah.
Yes, we are three Gemini moons, Rachel, myself, and Merryman, and one is Virgo, one is Libra, one is Scorpio. So it's all very synchronized. And one is zero Gemini, the other one is 15, 14 Gemini, and
14
I'm
Gemini.
the end of Gemini. So beautiful. Any last questions and comments?
Before we go, I'm going to close our records.
Okay.
Yeah. But if anybody has any questions, that's great. But it's always important. I think when we're working I think a few things are important that I'm going to share. When you begin to work with the Akashic records, and I think everyone should learn to open their records. And you should learn to open the records for others as well, so that we can be these conduits for one another. But it's important to create a container. It's important to create a container for our astrology. I open the records, I pray before I read, and I open the records for people very frequently, not all the time, before we read. And then we close them to create the neat container. Neptune doesn't have its boundaries, but we still need to create the complete container for the work that we do. There's an integrity, I think, that goes with this.
And protection.
It's protection, sure. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm the Virgo. You're the Scorpio worried about protection. I'm like, where's our integrity? So, okay. So I'm going to have everyone just put your feet on the ground again. Put that left hand on the center of your chest, that feminine side. Balance it with the masculine hand. Taking a deep breath. I want you to visualize the circle that we've created. Visualize that heart light that's gone around to each of us and is merged with the light of the divine. See the light coming back from the divine within our own being, back from within the circle into our own being. Coming back into our heart center, settled in there. Feeling fully embodied, fully revitalized, fully filled with all of the information that you need to take from this time. And as we close your records, we send our tremendous gratitude for one another, for this opportunity to walk through the Aries, Neptune into Aries portal together, to birth this new way of living and thinking as spiritual beings having this human experience, and that we have the opportunity to do it together. We thank our great Creator for this opportunity. We thank each of you for showing up and being a part of this process. So with this, the records of this gathering are closed. We are grateful. Thank you. Amen and aho.
May it be so.
May it be so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Merryman. Looking
Thank you.
forward to the next steps.
Yes. Thank you. Bye-bye.